Imagine working your entire life, building a company from scratch, and finally selling it for $50 million, only to discover that the people you trusted most weren't celebrating you. They were plotting against you. When my son and his wife joined me for what should have been a joyful dinner, I never expected betrayal. But thanks to one sharp-eyed security guard, I learned the truth before it was too late. If you've ever been stabbed in the back by someone you love, this story will hit hard. Hit that like button, subscribe for more real-life revenge stories. And let's dive into the night my own son tried to poison me. 1. Setup. The success and celebration. I had spent decades grinding, sacrificing, and losing sleep over my company. Every brick of my success was laid with failure, persistence, and more than a few tears. When the day came that I sold my company for $50 million, I should have felt nothing but pride. But money doesn't change who you are. It only shows you who the people around you really are. I decided to celebrate with my son, Daniel, and his wife, Claire. They hadn't always believed in me. In fact, Daniel once called my dream a waste of time. Still, he was my son. I wanted to share my joy, to prove that after all the storms, we could finally sit together in peace and happiness. I booked one of the finest restaurants in the city. Dim chandeliers cast a golden glow, glasses clinked, and soft jazz hummed in the background. It felt like a night worth remembering. The uneasy dinner, when they arrived, Daniel plastered on a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Claire was dressed elegantly, but her eyes darted around, restless, calculating. We ordered wine. Daniel toasted me, to Dad, the genius who finally made it, and I raised my glass, smiling. But underneath the joy, I couldn't ignore the strange distance in his voice. Throughout dinner, I noticed subtle exchanges between Daniel and Claire. Quick glances, half smiles, whispered words I couldn't catch. My stomach tightened, not from food, but from instinct. Still, I brushed it aside. This was my night, and I wanted to believe in my family. The poisoning attempt toward the end of the evening, Daniel insisted on pouring my juice himself. I found it odd, but before I could question it, he had already poured, smiling as though this small act was somehow sentimental. He lifted his own glass with exaggerated enthusiasm. "Drink up, Dad. Tonight's about you." Something in his tone felt wrong. I hesitated for just a second. But before I could sip, a voice interrupted. The security guard, a tall man in a crisp uniform, approached with hesitation. His words froze me. "Sir, I don't mean to intrude, but I saw him pour something into your juice." My hand stopped midair. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my throat. I looked at my son. His face went pale, then flushed crimson. Claire's hand twitched as if ready to bolt. The realization and betrayal time slowed. My own son, my flesh and blood, the boy whose scraped knees I'd bandaged, whose college tuition I paid, whose first car I bought, had just tried to poison me. And for what? Money? Inheritance? Daniel stammered, "Dad, it's not what it looks like." But I knew. Deep down I knew. This wasn't about misunderstanding. This was greed. This was betrayal in its purest, ugliest form. 5. The turning point. My resolve. The old me, the father who always forgave, who turned the other cheek, wanted to cry. But the man who built a $50 million empire, he wanted justice. That was the moment my heart hardened. My son had made his choice. Now, I would make mine. Revenge planning and execution. I didn't make a scene right there. That would have been too easy, too forgettable. Instead, I calmly set my glass down and smiled faintly. "You're right, son. Tonight's about me. Let's drink later at the house. I've got something special to show you both." I watched relief flicker across his face. He thought he'd gotten away with it, but behind my calm eyes, plans were forming. When we returned home, I excused myself and called my attorney and an old friend in law enforcement. Quietly, I explained everything. By the time Daniel and Claire were sipping the wine I'd poured for them. Authorities were already on their way. The trappee played my role perfectly, laughing, smiling, pretending to be oblivious. My son didn't notice the small cameras I'd had installed years ago for security. He didn't notice how I steered the conversation toward inheritance, asking sly questions like, "So, Daniel, if I were gone tomorrow, what would you do with the money?" His eyes lit up in ways that made my stomach churn. Claire leaned in, smirking, her hand over his, and then, flashing lights outside, knocks on the door. Officers walked in, calm but firm, Daniel's face drained of color. Claire tried to protest, but the cameras told the truth. The evidence was undeniable. The confrontation, as they were being led out, Daniel turned to me, rage and desperation in his voice. "Dad, you set me up." I stood, my voice steady, cold as steel. "No, Daniel. You set yourself up the moment you tried to kill your own father for money you didn't earn." His eyes burned with fury, but beneath it, I saw fear. The same fear that once made him run to me after nightmares. But this time, I didn't comfort him. This time, I let the consequences embrace him instead. Daniel and Claire were charged. Attempted poisoning, conspiracy, intent to murder. The inheritance they coveted, legally stripped away. My lawyer ensured not a single cent of my wealth would ever reach them, and the sweetest part? Every dollar I had once planned to leave my son, I redirected to charity. Scholarships, shelters, medical research. I made sure his betrayal would fuel a legacy of kindness. That was my revenge. Not just punishing him, but turning his greed into a force for good he could never touch. Betrayal from strangers hurts. But betrayal from family? That cuts deeper than any knife. Still, I learned something that night. Sometimes the best revenge isn't anger. It's removing toxic people from your life and making sure they never control your happiness again. If this story gave you chills, smash that like button and tell me in the comments, what would you have done in my place? And don't forget to subscribe, because there are more stories of justice, karma, and revenge you won't want to miss.